It's a special privilege for me to introduce my old friend Tex Harris. You have to think about human rights in multiple ways. Most of you know and hear about human rights defenders in the civil society. Well, human rights defenders exist also within the public service. And Tex Harris exemplifies that tradition, the tradition of dissent within the U.S. Foreign Service, well known for being the flesh factory of the State Department, and in achieving success in defending human rights within the U.S. diplomatic service. So you can read all about the details in the program, but the bottom line, quite simply, is that Tex Harris, with the courage that he brought to his service as a mid-level diplomat in the American Embassy in Buenos Aires, saved lives. It's as simple as that. It gives me great pleasure to present the UNA-NCA Special Award for the use of diplomacy in the protection of human rights to Tex Harris.
I think all of us who've done things need to be thankful. Mom, thank you for your Catholic vision. You've got to be helpful and you've got to do the right thing. Julie, my other kids, thank you for your love and support. Constantly through the battles, there's been many battles, not just in Argentina. And to the great human rights team, I was one person. I played a role, like in a football team or soccer team, with lots of other people. I'm going to run through some names here because some of them are here. First, the Madres of the Plaza de Mayo. Scared, elderly women who marched around because their kids had been brutalized, whose scarves that they wore with their kids' names embroidered on them became symbols around the world. Thousands of family members who came to the American Embassy to give me the information about their lost kids. Blanca Bolenweider, my right-hand assistant. We did all this before computers. We had 5x8 cards with big stiff cards, and we would sit every day and say, what the hell is going on? And we have to remember those were the days. 2 people inside the embassy, only 2 in that huge embassy who helped me. The legal attaché, Bob Scherer, and the labor attaché, Emilio Mignoni, a wonderful mentor and hero for Argentine human rights, whose dear daughter Monica was taken and killed because she was a believing Catholic Christian who believed that service to the poor was important. Rabbi Marshall Meyer, a man who I loved and cried with. The press, Bob Cox, who was Buenos Aires Herald, Karen Young, who can't be here tonight, but was now the senior diplomatic correspondent of the Washington Post, Charlie Krause, Wanda Elise, and scores of journalists from around the world who came through Buenos Aires. I met with them and told them what the hell was going on. They went home and they wrote it up in La Stampa, in the Observer, and all the papers around the world, and told the horrors of what was going on in Argentina, and they bought me a steak lunch and a bottle of wine. NGO leaders, Mike Posner, predecessor, wonderful guy, Gordon Rosenthal from the Harris in a developing a new world. And a guy that you've heard of, Deputy Secretary Warren Christopher, who put himself up as a court inside the State Department to arbitrate all these decisions. And he held court based on the information from the embassy from Harris was here, the information on the negative consequences of taking actions against Argentina was prevented by the Latin American Bureau, and he decided to make mostly right decisions. And lastly, but most importantly, a peanut farmer from Georgia. A guy by the name of Jimmy Carter, who changed America's foreign policy from strict anti-communism to a broader agenda which included human rights. What the hell is human rights? Human rights essentially says that we as a country, or any country, cares about how another country treats its own citizens. And if they treat them badly, that's going to affect the relationship that we have with that other country. This is the team. That enormous gang of people. There was no central direction. We all just did our jobs. We all did our jobs to make the consciousness of the human rights horror show that was going on in Argentina obvious and aware throughout the world. Because it wasn't only Argentines who were killed. There were a few Americans, there were a few Swedes, there were a few French, all the others. The whole world was outraged. And in so doing, we added a new dimension to diplomacy. We added a dimension to diplomacy. When I entered the Foreign Service, my good friend Harry Lady, many years ago, we were told that diplomats did not deal with the other countries on internal affairs. That was off the rule book. We talked about trade, we talked about airplane rights, we talked about all these other things, but we did not talk to the other countries. We did not judge them in terms of their internal affairs. And this great cascade of justice, which is going on, which is moving, and which that team that I was a part of had a big say in terms of raising the consciousness, meant that the world was so mortified, horrified by what was going on in Argentina, that they decided that we needed to have international norms which diplomats would talk about related to the behavior of how a country treats its own citizens. Argentina's horror is absolutely relevant to what's going on in the world today. Because the reason why the Argentine military decided to adopt a very careful, strict doctrine, which the French had used in Algeria, the French had used in Vietnam, not in France, but in their colonies, to fight terrorism, was a very straightforward plan. You grab a suspected terrorist, you torture them, and you get the names of their accomplices. You then go out and grab their accomplices, you torture them, you get the names, and then you kill everybody in a clandestine fashion. That was the French solution. It did not work in Algeria, it did not work in Vietnam, it did not work in Argentina. It is the absolute worst way to fight terrorism. The problem is that when policymakers in the world are faced with the threat of terrorism, there is this absolute stunning ability for them to do, excuse the French, dumb-ass things. And they make terrible, terrible mistakes throughout the world. And that is what is happening throughout. Argentina is kind of the poster child for countries that made among the very worst decisions in terms of how to deal with the persistent problem of terrorism. The Argentines secretly murdered over 14,000 persons. We are upset. We can't say that listening to my telephone calls, my emails. This was a government that killed 14,000 of their citizens. And one of their 601 intelligence, beginners will know who they are, came to me and he said, Harris, he said, we have not only to kill the terrorists. The terrorist guy's got a bomb or a pistol, or a gal's got a bomb or a pistol. caterpillar their lot. But they decided that in order to win the fight against godless communism, which was threatening Western civilization, they needed not only to kill the terrorists, but based on a cancer model, they had to kill the infected, tear out the infected tissue, and also cut out the surrounding tissue that supported the cancerous cells. So they went after Christian do-gooders, they went after union people, they went after people whose only crime was thinking against the government. And that was the heart of Argentina. Today, a nation is judged by how it treats its own citizens. I was the diplomatic midfielder, along with many others, who passed the information in Argentina about the horrors that was going on there, kind of like a football, soccer player, passed it up to the forwards, who were the policymakers, and they scored some goals in putting pressure on the government of Argentina to end the horrible, destructive policy of municipalism that they had, and also establish a new norm in modern diplomacy. That was great. We scored some goals. But the key lesson must be remembered.